Welcome to the War Room. Here on Capitol Hill, Jack Maxey, Greg Manns, Raheem Kassam. On America's Voice .news on Newsmax TV. Later on in the day on the John Fredericks Radio Network. I understand the John Fredericks Radio Network is expanding. And with our local radio partners, FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago, blown through the CCP's firewall in China, thanks to G News and GTV, subtitled in Mandarin. You're in the War Room, and we're very delighted to have you here. Make sure you're sharing every single thing of value that you see come out of here. We are so grateful for your feedback, hashtag War Room Pandemic, and in the YouTube live chat as well. We monitor it, we study it, we take your tips and hints and criticisms to heart. It's very important to us that this isn't just us talking at you. This is a user and a listener-driven show. And one of the things that we wanted to do this hour, because we had so much amazing feedback about the powerful both black and religious voices that have been on the show in the last week, we wanted to bring more of that to you. You know, not that I'm a white guy, but Don Lemon accuses conservatives of white mansplaining in the absence of actually naming the people who are in the White House the other day. Do we have that Jake Tapper tweet, by the way, America's Voice, that I want to show the audience if you're watching this on the live stream? And by the way, guys out there, if you listen to this on the podcast, great. We're so delighted that you're subscribed and that you're listening to this. But the video stuff that the Denver production team do, you know, they're really amazing, and it really adds to the value of the show. So if you get a chance to watch it on the live streams, you can watch America's Voice on Pluto. There's an app. If you have Apple TV, you can watch it on americasvoice.news. It's really quite so. Let's throw that tweet on the screen here instead of my ugly mug. This is Jake Tapper attacking Raynard Jackson, the founder of Black Americans for a Better Future, because of what Raynard Jackson said in the White House to the President of the United States, criticizing the media for playing the division game. But interestingly, Jake Tapper didn't name Raynard Jackson, and Jake Tapper didn't point out that Raynard Jackson, you wouldn't have even known it was Raynard Jackson, but didn't point out that this voice was from a black man in the White House speaking to President Trump. He made it look like it was exactly what Don Lemon was crying about the other night, the white mansplaining. But it wasn't. And here's the thing. They are canceling black conservative voices. They are canceling black pro-Trump voices. They are canceling black spiritual voices and religious leaders up and down the country, the things that do not fit with the narrative. What's the narrative? The summer of love. At Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, right? This is all peace and love and kindness and justice. No, it's not. You heard in the last one from the police chief there in Seattle talking about the rapes, the robberies in and around that area, and you heard how the police response time has had to go up. Now, if you're an ordinary citizen, you don't have anything to do with this, you might be sympathetic to the protesters, but hey, somebody wants to invade your home, and the police response time has gone from 7 minutes to 15 minutes there in Seattle. That doesn't sound like the summer of love to me. That sounds like a summer of discontent. That sounds like a summer of destruction. It sounds like a summer of chaos. And right before a presidential election, a summer of chaos is owned by the Democratic Party of America and their running dogs at CCPNN and MSDNC. They own this. This is on them. When this gets worse, and when the fingers are being pointed, the blame is being attributed, make sure you remember who was constantly and consistently driving a wedge in Western civilization. Instead of bringing people together, instead of saying, as we have said on this show, yes, there was something drastically and horribly wrong about the death of George Floyd, and there are questions that need to be answered. By the way, gentlemen, and to the audience at home, I'm not a fan of no-knock warrants. I don't think this is a thing that should be in routine use. I think there's a healthy conversation that can be had about that, and I think that we have to get everyone around the table to discuss these things. But allowing Antifa, who Project Veritas taught us yesterday, in their hidden camera footage that they got 2 years ago, Antifa sponsored by George Soros and the Open Society Foundations. Antifa supported by and given succor to by Tom Steyer and the billionaire Democrats out there standing on the Democrat stage, competing to be the presidential candidate. These are the people driving the discord. These are the people driving the discontent. Oh, sorry, I mean the summer of love. We want to now dedicate this hour to the people, the voices, who are interested in bringing the country back together. The people who are interested in having constructive dialogue. Remember, they'll tell you the Chaz is about peace and love, while they hold up signs that say no peace. Well, there are wounds that need to be healed here, and we're delighted to be joined in this hour by a great many people who have that capability and who have been doing this hard work, real work in communities for years, who have watched people struggle, who have lent their whole lives to fixing iniquities at their local level and at a national level. These aren't people who go up on CNN and grandstand every night, who make fun and roll their eyes at the president for holding a rally in Tulsa on Juneteenth. These are people who have dedicated their lives to bringing America together, and I'm delighted now to be joined by Bishop Aubrey Shines, who's been on this show before. We're very grateful for it. Bishop, thank you for joining us here. Sorry about my extended rant. It wasn't planned, but that's the way things go, Bishop.
No, it was fantastic. Actually, I didn't actually consider it a rant. You kind of echo what so many of us have been saying for just such a long period of time. So when I heard you sharing the things that you're sharing, I just thought, man, this is really, really fantastic. And again, when I hear the Don Lemons, the Tappers, those in the mainstream media, they don't represent all of America. They make those things very, very clear. They're not interested in representing America, or what they'll do is they'll speak as if though they're representing all of America, but they don't. This is why right now, even in this current presidency, you are seeing numbers that reflect something that no other outside of the Democratic Party have ever seen. When you get blacks, Hispanics, 30-40% that are supporting this president, that's saying something. And there's a reason why that the mainstream media doesn't want guys like myself and teams like myself on there, because we can speak truth, again, with a great deal of civility, diplomacy, but make no mistake of being able to rod shot over us a bunch of non-starters as it relates to some of the data that's out there. And again, this is what we're about. And so we're so happy that shows like yours really exist. Thanks so much.
We also have Reverend Derek McCoy joining us on the line now, and I want to bring the Reverend in on this conversation too. Jack Maxey, Reverend McCoy, Bishop Aubrey Shines, take it away. Jack.
Guys, listen, I really want to hear what your plan is for America. And also, Bishop, I just want you to tell you the prayer that you gave us, you gave the country a few days ago, was really, really impactful. We got so much information back on that. It meant a lot to a lot of people. And so props to what you gentlemen do as a profession, saving our souls.
Well, thanks so much, Jack. It was a pleasure, and again, to be able to share. But our real objective here is just to kind of illuminate the other side of the argument, because you're not hearing it in mainstream media. Case in point, within the last 20 hours or so, you've had, and I'll just take two examples of corporations. You take corporations that are defunding certain shows that kind of spotlight what's going on, like a Tucker Carlson or some of the other entities like Starbucks, where in one day they're saying, hey, none of our employees are going to be able to wear Black Lives Matter shirts. But at the same time, they just turned and said, you know what, okay, you will. But what they won't allow, and I'll say this especially to blacks, what they won't allow anything on there about all lives matter. They won't allow an employee to wear something like there's a genocide within the black community, and it's called Planned Parenthood. What they won't tell those individuals is that while they're saying they are on your side and we're going to sponsor Black Lives Matter, those same corporations, they don't have, and I've checked the charts, they don't have at their hierarchy, on their boards, in their interim circle, they don't have black representation. If that's what they believe in, diversity by one's ethnicity, it's certainly not reflected among the upper sphere of their organization. So again, it's a ruse. It is pure hypocrisy. And this is what our group is doing. Our group is simply to have an honest dialogue. And again, even for the gentleman that was murdered in a beastly manner by police. Well, we're not crazy. We know that that doesn't represent all police. And why? Because we have the statistics to prove that it doesn't represent all police. And so what they're trying to do, the Don Lemons, the Tappers, they're trying to, quote, speak on our behalf. Well, they don't speak on our behalf. We're not this myopic group that don't have an opinion. And by the way, we're able to read. We know science. We're looking at the facts. Those mainstream media outlets do not represent us at all, Jack.
Bishop, one of the things you were talking about, the polling, it was interesting. I saw a few days ago that they say that Donald Trump actually has a lot of support among younger African Americans, particularly young men, which I thought was kind of encouraging considering all the troubles.
But Bishop as well, Bishop, just before you come back on that, I want to bring in Reverend McCoy as well on this first. Over to the Reverend and then back to Bishop Shines. Okay, well, my clearly the best laid plans. We can have the audio there. We're going to try and get the audio for.
We'll get Reverend McCoy back here in a second.
I guess. Thank you, Jack. I was stuttering all over myself. But Bishop, clearly the microphone wants you. Go right
ahead. Well, his voice is much stronger, and what a great colleague and a founder that I have in Reverend McCoy, as well as Pastor Reid and Pastor Vega. Again, Jack, it goes back to your question. The reason that those stats, and we're seeing those numbers as well, it's simple. And everyone, by the way, just wants to say, well, this is only about employment, because look at how great America's done under Trump versus any other president, by the way, as it relates to employment numbers, not just blacks, whites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not that, gentlemen, why Donald Trump is impacting all Americans. It's simple. We have something called the Constitution, and we have begun to see erode our First Amendment. As a bishop, I have congregants that are in executive offices in various parts, as it relates to their vocation. What most audiences don't even realize that in these major corporations, these corporations are shutting down Christian voices, conservative voices, but they're forcing their employees to celebrate what they call diversity. So case in point, if you juxtapose the difference between traditional marriage and marriage that is not traditional at all, you will obviously find yourself in a ton of trouble. These are things that blacks are experiencing as well. Remember, there's still a very high percentage of blacks that have what we call a moral compass as it relates to marriage. Now, again, their voting hasn't reflected that. There's a reason for that as well. We're seeing that change. Well, President Donald Trump is changing that narrative, and as a result of it, blacks are seeing the impact of it. Yeah. Not just with that, not just with
Bishop,
the police
just hold that thought.
Yeah.
We've got a break.
Sure.
We've got a break, and when we come back to you, back to Reverend Derek McCoy, we've got the whole hour for you carved out, so don't you go anywhere. #War and Pandemic. If you have any questions for these great voices that we have on this show in this hour, make sure you hit us up. #War and Pandemic. Jack's monitoring it. We'll be right back after this short break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey, Greg Manns. The good news is Stephen K. Bannon will be back tomorrow with a new Descent into Hell special. And then I think back in the War Room next week. I'm not sure. We can't promise anything, but he might have to pry this microphone from my cold, dead hands. We'll see how that all goes. Episode 227 of War and Pandemic, and we have put a poll out there earlier on today about how the show shapes up over the course of this Summer of Love, as Mayor Durkin has been calling it there in Seattle, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, while the police complained about the response times going up and robberies and rapes occurring in that area. Mayor Durkin calling it the Summer of Love. And Governor Inslee, in fact, before we get back to Bishop Shines, and you know, we have the audio, we have clearing up audio with Reverend McCoy, but we have Reverend Francisco Vega joining us as well. But before we go back there, let's play Governor Inslee's clip, because this beggars belief that you have a Democrat governor, and I want to connect some dots for you here, guys, and it's very simple, but look at what has been taking place with the coronavirus pandemic and the people in the nursing homes being shoved back in the nursing homes, and the deaths upon deaths that we're seeing as a result of these Democratic governors, either by intent or by sheer incompetence. The same thing we're now seeing with the Summer of Love and the Antifa protests. Remember, the Antifa that we were told, we gaslighted about in the media, that doesn't exist, now seems to have occupied a significant chunk of Seattle. Let's hear what Governor Inslee had to say about this just 48 hours ago. Roll the clip. We got the buffering signal there. We got hey Vish, can you wire a check to Denver? We'll pay for their internet to be upgraded if they're still on dial-up. Let's try and roll that clip again.
Governor, I'd like to ask you about what's going on in Seattle. There's this thing called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. What's your thought on that? The fact that the protesters have taken that over and not allowing people to come and go freely? And regarding the National Guard.
Well, that's news to me, so I'll have to reserve any comment about it. I have not heard anything about that from any credible source. Not that you're not credible. It's just like, before I espouse an opinion, I should know of which I speak.
Keith, you mentioned having a follow-up.
Yeah, as far as the National Guard, how long are you going to keep them there? And
we can scrap the rest of this. The governor has no idea that this is taking place in the biggest city in his state. Extraordinary levels of incompetence that we're seeing up and down the country. Again, whether it was the coronavirus pandemic, which, remember, the media still says, oh, the numbers keep ticking up. This is President Trump. He's abandoning the battlefield. This is nursing home deaths upon nursing home deaths in Pennsylvania, in New York.
79% in Pennsylvania, over 60 in Connecticut. We see this repeated over and over again. And what's so tragic about this, and I'll pull the clip. I think it was our episode 6 when we first saw the mortalities. We knew at that time, we made the recommendation that these old age homes should be isolated. In fact, there was one national group that followed our advice and had a symposium where about 200 groups showed up, and I believe their homes did very, very well. It's a sad thing. Lessons learned at a very high price.
Jack, I want to send the show back over to Bishop Aubrey Shines, and I think we have Reverend Francisco Vega on the line now. We're having a few, I think, some CCP gremlins in our studio here right now. But if Bishop Shines, do we have you?
Or is that we have Derek? Is that you?
I don't think we have anyone right now. I think we've got some serious technical difficulties, but we work through them. We continue the chat in studio. Greg Manns is signaling, guys, which means it's time for the Greg Manns portion of the show. You only get 10 seconds of Greg, but it's always a killer moment. Let's go to Greg Manns.
I just want to go back to Governor Inslee. What we witnessed there was a complete failure of government, intergovernmental actions, coordination. It's completely inexcusable. And when I saw that, it was really breathtaking, completely inexcusable.
Jack.
And zero communication. I mean, it's almost like you want to ask him, well, I didn't read the newspaper this morning, so I'm sorry I'm a little bit behind. I mean, it's just pathetic. But we're seeing this across the board, and it's not that he doesn't know. It's that he doesn't have an answer, so he has to create a sort of a denial to just get out of taking a position. looks like we might have these guys back here.
Well, we'll keep rolling until we have it for certain, Jack. And I want to come back to this to Governor Inslee there for a second, because look, whether it's Sadiq Khan in London, whether it's Governor Inslee in Washington State, whether it's Andrew Cuomo, and by the way, oh gosh, this is one of the biggest sources of frustration to me, is that Chris Cuomo has his brother on all the time, and they joke and laugh and pal around and make fools out of themselves. And that's fine. That's their prerogative. But not once has Chris Cuomo asked Andrew Cuomo a single thing about the death rate in New York as a result of Governor Cuomo's policies about nursing homes. And it really, aggravates me. You might say, oh, well, that's obvious. Yeah, I guess it is. But CNN, facts first, CNN, they claim to have all this journalistic integrity, and they claim that even if they're, joking around or having these segments dedicated to two brothers joshing around, that they'll still ask the hard questions. He's never been asked a hard question.
Well, and he never will. This is the situation that we have in the media. I almost wonder sometimes with Chris and his brother why the FCC doesn't step in, because literally he must have been given hundreds of hours of softball coverage for the mayor of New York from his brother through a major network. It doesn't seem fair to me in some respects. But also, I think that what we have to remember is that what we saw in the collapse of their approach to the coronavirus really was them in a crisis. But this is them every day. Their states do not function even without a coronavirus. And now they want the federal government to bail them out. Why? Because of 3 months of coronavirus? No, we're talking about 30 to 50 years of absolute incompetent leadership in most of these inner cities. And the Democratic Party has to own it. And I really hope for the people, the average American living in those cities, that you wake up to the fact that your leadership has betrayed you. It's time to get new blood in there. Wonderful people in every city in America. I want other people to run for office.
All right. Interesting point. And let's get down into it then. Let's get down into just how uncomfortable this might be for some conservatives, because even at this time of epic crisis in Democrat-run states, the polling shows that conservatives are actually behind in a lot of places. You look at Arizona, for instance, and we're not talking necessarily about the gubernatorial race, but still, what is going on? Where is the disconnect? Are people buying into what CCPNN is telling them?
Well, I think to a certain extent people are buying in, but, Americans are slow to figure things out. But when they figure them out, they make solid decisions. And I think that we are educating people. I think groups like Conservative Clergy of Color are educating people. And people are beginning to wake up to this scam that we've been fed over the last couple decades. And I think people are going to come around to the fact that they have been taken advantage of. Same thing is going to happen in Arizona. Same thing is going to happen in other places, because the choice is stark. Chaos or America. That's it, right?
Well, we had a monumental tech flub a moment ago. Not anybody's fault. Gremlins in the system. It happens sometimes. But you're back here in the war room. Jack Maxey, Greg Mans, Raheem Kassam. I believe we can now bring back in Bishop Aubrey Shines and Reverend Francisco Vega. Gentlemen, are you with us? I've got video. I've got no audio. I think we can hear him. Okay.
Oh boy.
Okay. Let's go. Reverend Francisco Vega, thank you so much for joining us here. We've got 2 minutes until the break, but hang over the break if you can. We want to get a lot more from you. Your general thoughts in the last couple of weeks with what we've seen taking place, and tell us specifically about what you're seeing in your community, please, Reverend Vega.
Well, what I'm going on with the pandemic and what you're seeing even with what's going on with Black Lives Matter movement, it's been completely mind-boggling to see how we are allowing anarchists and opportunists, even secular humanistic activists are trying to subvert and revise the law and order and the purpose of what we're seeing in our nation. So as a Christian, as a clergy of color, and someone who is deeply entrenched in our communities from the inner city and what we do in our church and our work, we have ground level perspective on what's happening concerning these political policies and things that have been perpetuated against the African American and Hispanic community. And I think there's just a lot of historical revisionism that is really gaslighting and pouring fuel on the sentiment of a lot of people who may are genuinely hurting or misunderstanding. There's a lot of groupthink, and so it's our part and really unite the community of color, even in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., in the spirit of people like Thomas Sowell, in the spirit of people like Booker T, who really who shared that ethos that was affecting our communities. And so that's a huge thing that I'm feeling in my heart right now, and I'm seeing in our nation. And I feel like it's time for us to take a stand and to speak up. And it's not even just political. This is socioeconomic. This is ideological. And this is something that has to be addressed.
Reverend Vega and Bishop Aubrey Shines, I want you to hang on over this break. We're going to go to a quick break here. War and Pandemic. Hashtag War and Pandemic. If you have questions for the guys, obviously, we hope we're over our technical... Not quite over the technical issues. We'll get there in the break. And by the way, you might see me smiling now. You should hear me in the break. Producer, hit the belt. We'll be back. War and Pandemic in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
2020 has been a gut punch to American business, and if you're going to succeed, you need every possible advantage. Smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. Get your free guide right now at netsuite.com/Bannon. You're back in the war room. Jack, Maxey, Greg Mans, Raheem Kassam, and we have our technical difficulties, touch wood, fingers crossed, all of that dealt with. Jack.
Reverend Vega, I wanted to touch on something that you just referenced in your last words, and you mentioned Booker T. Washington. And one of the things that I think is so tragic about our country today is that we forget these magnificent men from history, men and women who can give us the kind of encouragement that shows us the path forward. Other people from that year were incredibly impactful to me as a young man. George Washington Carver, who worked closely with Booker T. And then you think of Frederick Douglass. I think reading his autobiography changed my life as a young man. And I think it would be really wonderful thing to get these men back into the public square, back into a dialogue. I know they've been absent for about 50 years, not meeting perhaps the perfect, perfection of our current era, but as human beings, what magnificent men. And they could be great instructions for our young today, in my opinion. Back to you, Reverend.
Absolutely. I feel like we're dealing with a one-sided narrative where, there are many, it's almost like a monopolization of mindsets where we're not allowed as people of color from diverse ethnic backgrounds to see the rich historic contribution of African-American leaders like you just mentioned, and the Thomas Sowells, the Booker T. Washingtons, the Frederick Douglass. I mean, just the intellect, the ingenuity of people like George Washington Carver, and all of these great icons in the community of color, and really creating a balanced narrative that shows people like that who their message, their intellect, their ethos, the things that they were sharing that would bring construction culture in our society, and even the reconstruction that's necessary in the community of color as it pertains to family, as it pertains to marriage. All those different things have to be factored in if we are looking into having just had a phone call there, excuse me, that we're looking into to really rebuilding, reorganizing, restructuring our communities. Hence the concept Black Lives Matter as a concept, beautiful concept. All lives were created equal. We see that in our founding documents. So I believe there was an inference there of equality of all life. And I believe that ethos still carries on today. But we have to value Black life in the womb. We have to go back to valuing in the community of color, at least, Black marriages, Black family, and Black children. And all of those things encompass a totality of loving and really listening to those initial voices from history and culture to get the proper perspective of what are some of the things in our culture, in our community that we have to change, especially in the community of color and in all cultures.
I want to bring Reverend McCoy in on this as well. We've had some technical difficulties with Reverend McCoy, so I want to give the Reverend some time here. Reverend, what do you have to add to that? Reverend McCoy?
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You should be able to hear me now. Right?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you. Great.
Good.
Go right ahead.
Well, Reverend Vega is absolutely true. It's a pleasure being with you first and foremost. But just so you understand, there are several narratives that just keep trying to recycle and recycle. And what we see out here today is a real echo chamber, but no leadership. And really, I think we're trying to aspire to be here between Bishop Shines and Reverend Vega and myself and others like us, is that there are real solutionists out here. And I think Reverend Vega pointed quite articulately about people of the past and historians that have walked this way before and great activists that have really charted the way for us. But now it's time to step on what they have done and build upon what they've done, not just negate all the past. And now we're thinking there's a whole nother narrative out here that, you know, nothing is good, America was never great, and everything is bad. Well, that's a false narrative completely. And what we need to understand is that while we're sitting here and we're having this more intense or heavy dialogue, it's because of the tragedy of a loss of life. And when we're counting down the streets and saying Black Lives Matter, the real deal is every single life matters. And we would not have a passion or even an empathy for life if it were not for our Creator, which we understand that's who gives life in the first place. And so it doesn't make a difference if it's a green, purple, blue, yellow. And hear me, I take this flack even in my own community because I keep saying, no, you're a person that just thinks one way. Because if it helps our community, it's going to help every community. And that's what we want to make sure that we're communicating, that today there are a lot of people out here in this society, in this culture, in this world, who believe, quite honestly, that, yeah, the Don Lemons don't speak for us, the Al Sharptons don't speak for us. A lot of these other folks do not represent our voices, and we have a voice that needs to be heard. I call it the solutionist perspective, that we can bring good, solid solutions to what's going on right now, and people need to hear it and they need to think. I think Ravi Zacharias, who just passed recently, was a guy who said, let my people think. And, it's one of those things right now that we have to push that to make sure that people are processing this and know that this does not stop automatically at one particular place in an elected official line. This is a systemic issue that we have to fix, at our local levels of government, at our school boards levels of government, as well as at the presidency, the Congress, the Senate, our local delegates, our local state senators. We have to be thinking about this, and we can't just be robots signed up to look at one set of ballots and say, okay, I'm going to go with the sample ballot and go with whatever, but not know anything what people believe for or what people stand by. And I think, I keep telling some of my family members, and this is not a shot at our elected officials. I appreciate their service, but some of our elected officials in the CBC and other places have gotten a great, good, strong career via the U.S. government, and they are paid extremely well and have a lot of benefits. But right now, it's time we need a little bit more than just what's good for your salary or your pocket or your long-term career. What are the real solutions we can bring to the table that are as inclusive of a lot of different voices and people?
Bishop Shines?
Well, again, it's the same thing that Reverend McCoy just echoed. And I'll piggyback on that in this regard. When I look at a Reverend McCoy, who sits and has said before various congressional leaders, whether it's obviously there at our Congress and or at the legislator level in Maryland when he was fighting for traditional marriage. Those individuals like us, we have a perspective. It's historical. We don't just do this hyphenated world of Black or an Italian or German. We first see ourselves, number one, as Christians, and then subsequent to that, we see ourselves as American. Once ethnicity shouldn't be playing a role as it relates to the various countercultural constructs that are out there. These issues matter. This is the reason why. This group of conservative guys of color, we have the experience, longevity, we have the media presence, things that we have been doing. Now, at the same time, gentlemen, Jack, and you alluded to this earlier when you asked a question, but it goes back to this. The mainstream media, do you really think they're going to hear voices like ours? Because they need the LeBron James. They need various entertainers that will continue to speak their narrative. And again, our group here, we're not just addressing things like the atrocity that all of us witnessed and all of us regurgitated when we watched this police officer take the life of this young man. And again, we're not here to argue. I've already had some PR people calling me, wanting me to fight with Candace Owens. Look, I love Candace. Candace is wrong as it relates to bringing up a person's past, therefore kind of way justifying this unsolved issue here. We believe in due process, but at the same time, we must expose the Antifas. We must expose the fact that Black Lives Matter, when they get their millions of dollars in contributions, and most people don't realize it, they're actually able to take whatever funds they want to and give it to whomever they want to. By the way, all of those individuals they're giving their extra funds to, they're the Democratic Party. Why isn't Jack, what's his name, Don Lemon and Tapper, why are these guys in Cuomo talking about that these monies are going into the coffers of the DNC? See, these are issues that audiences everywhere need to know, because there's an intrinsic dynamic that is trying to destroy America, pit us against each other based on the melanin or the lack thereof in our human DNA, and they're trying to divide us. But America, we will stand, we will fight for this great country, we will see the unity. And again, guys, it's shows like this that give us a voice, as well as the support that we need to get this message out.
Well, honestly, I mean, we're incredibly grateful for you guys making the time and coming on, and we want you to stick with us over the break as well. And just it's so interesting that you raised that, Bishop Shines, about this. You know, we popped a story on the National Pulse yesterday about Black Lives Matter using the defund the police campaign that they have up on their site. When you go and you click donate, it takes you to Act Blue, and Act Blue is responsible for raising 99.64% of the Biden for president effort. And the critics will come around and say, yeah, but Act Blue is just a fundraising mechanism. Sure. But there are people out there who might want to support the general concept of the Black Lives Matter movement, or the general concept of more equality, or the general concept of, hey, you know, I don't support no-knock warrants, or whatever it is. And they end up having to donate through this exclusively Democratic Party platform. And when the head of Black Lives Matter in the United States is asked on a Reddit Ask Me Anything, asked about where the fundraising is going and how they're going to divvy it up, and whether or not it's going to go to political candidates and causes, the answer is opaque, the answer is not clear, the answer is necessarily and intentionally vague, so that when the election is right on our doorstep, when we are 1 or 2 months away, you know, perhaps they can turn around and say, actually, you know what, we're going to let Act Blue divvy it up to whichever political candidates they feel like they want to. And at that point, who's it going to be? It's going to be Biden for president. Jack.
Well, I'm going to step away from the politics of this for a moment, because I have you gentlemen here. One of the things that I think has just been so difficult for this country, and one of the things that I think makes the whole term Black Lives Matter seem somewhat empty to me, is, for me, who came to faith very late in my life, it was a profound idea to just accept the fact that we were all made in the image of God. And it seems to me, without God, there is no way for people to be redeemed, right? You know, we were talking about Wilberforce, who came from a slaving family, and he writes that beautiful song, Amazing Grace, but there is no grace here, right? These people want to destroy their enemies. There's no way for people to meet somewhere in the middle, and that's why I think it's so important for you men of faith to go out there and talk to the American people.
We're going to go to a break in just a moment, chaps, but we'd really love for you guys to hang on. There's so much more to cover here on hashtag War and Pandemic, and we're going to look into the hashtag and see what the audience is saying, see if they have any questions there. If you're in the YouTube live chat, I'm in there as well. You can communicate with us. Let us know if you have any questions for these great voices. It's so important, and we're going to make this a regular thing, by the way. This is not a one-off thing here on War and Pandemic. We don't do, by the way, I'm not a white guy. We don't do tokenism, right? We're not trying to posture for anyone. This is a moment a critical moment in both America's history and in the history of the Western world. And we are here to bring the voices together. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back here on War and Pandemic. Make sure you're signed up at pandemic.warroom.org. And make sure you're following us at War and Pandemic for all the clips of the show afterwards. And we're really grateful when you share those clips after the show. Make sure you do it. We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Well, 2020, as you know, has been a gut punch to American business. And if the market yesterday and today is anything to go by, you know, it's all over the place. And if you are going to succeed in such a turbulent time, you're going to need every advantage possible. NetSuite by Oracle is the world's #1 cloud business system. Smart companies run on NetSuite because NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. It's everything you need all in one place. So whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in sales, NetSuite lets you manage every penny with precision. You'll have the agility to compete with anyone, work from anywhere, with your whole company right there on your phone. So join over 20,000 companies who trust NetSuite to make it happen. NetSuite has surveyed hundreds of business leaders and assembled a playbook of the top strategies that they're using as America reopens for business. You can get a free guide, the 7 actions businesses need to take now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/Bannon. It's a free guide and it's a free tour. So what do you have to lose? Go to netsuite.com/Bannon. That's netsuite.com/Bannon. You're back in the war room. Jack Maxey, Greg Mans, Raheem Kassam, Bishop Aubrey Shines, Reverend Derek McCoy, Reverend Francisco Vega, Reverend M.J. Reid. It's an all-star cast here this morning on the War Room. I'm going to throw it over to Jack Maxey and the guys joining remotely.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with you guys on my sensibility that this kind of loss of belief in the divine in this country has led to some of these problems that we're having in this idea. We talk about lives mattering, Black lives mattering, but without God, it does seem sort of hollow to me.
Reverend Reid.
Well, I believe what we're seeing today is a culmination of what has been taking place for over many years in this country. There seems to be a systematic attack, many-pronged attack to undermine what we call the Judeo-Christian ethic. And I believe that most of that is because in order for those who would radically transform this country with what they call progressive policies and basically turn America into something different from what it is, you first have to destroy the morality of the people. You have to rewrite it. You have to redefine it. And I think we're living in a time where the leftist agenda is to relabel everything. And that starts with undermining the family. As a Christian man, as a pastor of a church, we recognize from the Word of God that there are 2 things that God started primarily. Number 1 was the family. He made Adam and Eve. Jesus said that for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and he shall go unto his wife and cleave, and they shall be one. That's the nuclear family. And from a mother and father comes children. This is the family. And the family is the background of the foundation of every community is family. And if you want to disrupt, and if you want to destroy a country, if you want to undermine a country and radically change it, you have to destroy the foundation of it. So you can do it in a number of ways. You can do it economically, and you have to do it morally. And so what we're seeing is a concerted effort between those who are under the employ of their paymasters, whether they're in entertainment industry or politics. They're all working together in unison on every level, whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's the LGBT, whether it's the feminist movement. They're all aligned with this one goal. We have to do away with what the family means. You have to do away with what family stands for. It's no longer a man and a woman, but it can be a man and a man and a dog, a man and a cat. It's a slippery slope once you start. Once you undermine what the family is, you begin to destroy what community is. And then once something is destroyed, you can then begin to reroute it or begin to become what you call the surrogate. You begin to be that new voice to reshape and redesign America. So that's why we see it with this attack on Christianity, which is the attack on our Judeo-Christian views. And this must take place if you're going to really, honestly, undermine America, because America is nothing but millions of communities coming together under this Constitution, this Bill of Rights. And this is something we see everywhere. It started a long time ago. We've seen the definitions of what sexual identity has been changed by our psychological community and scientific voices. Regardless of those who spoke opposingly, we've seen an acceptance of many of these ideas that have rewritten the foundation of what we call man, woman, family. When you destroy the sexual identity of human beings and the identity of who they are, you're destroying relationship and family. It's like a ripple effect. And it's very, very cunning and I have to hand it to us. Our enemies are extremely smart. They're very, very intelligent in a way that they're destroying, deconstructing the family and bringing about division. Groups like Black Lives Matter, and it's interesting, the Noom de Plum, the name they use, Black Lives Matter. Who could really honestly disagree with that term, that Black Lives Matter? But that's a deceptive term, just like Planned Parenthood has nothing about Planning Parenthood. It's about abortion. So it's very deceptive in the way they use these terms, and they communicate them so excellently to the masses. And the masses accept, they give it the first pass. Oh yeah, Black Lives Matter. Oh, Planned Parenthood is good. But the truth of the matter, there is an underlining diabolical agenda that's at work to depopulate, to destroy economically. And we can leave it up to our politicians who have worked feverishly for years with backdoor deals, undermining the economics of this country with selling our companies out and our manufacturers to foreign countries. Nothing's made in America. It's tremendous and all over.
Reverend Reid, I couldn't have put him off. We sit here with this "Make Families Great Again" hat behind me that comes from the American Principles Project, one of the great groups here working for family values in Washington, D.C., probably one of the only ones. We've only got about 90 seconds left here, gentlemen, so I want to just get closing thoughts from everyone here, starting with Reverend Vega, 20 seconds, and then Reverend McCoy, and then Bishop Aubrey Shines. Reverend Vega.
I think we need to see a collective of the community of color come together, really returning, like Reverend Reid said, to the moral ethos and the fabric of our nation. And that means we don't put our pigment above biblical principles. We don't put our complexion or our melanin above the message. We have to unite for our morality. And the greatest civil rights need today is not merely police brutality, it's family reconstructionism.
Absolutely. Reverend Vega, thank you so much. Reverend McCoy.
Yeah, I would say, to go back and address really quickly, what are some solutions from a biblical standpoint? One of the things we're just standing for, because Vega already said the good stuff, but one of the things we would say is Micah 6:8. We need to walk humbly before our God. We need to love mercy, and we need to act with compassion. The other side is justice and righteousness are the foundation of God's throne. And so for us, it's about speaking truth, and both things exist. It's not one or the other, it's both and.
Absolutely.
And that has been sadly mistaken in our culture.
Bishop Shines, forgive me. We're only 10 seconds out from the break, so we're not going to be able to squeeze you in here. But we want you to come back next week and expand on this as the developments over the weekend continue. We thank you all so much for your time. War and Pandemic will return. Descent into Hell with Stephen K. Bannon tomorrow. See you then.